Hello, dear Manhwa enthusiasts. I hope you're all having an amazing day. Before we get started, I want to announce that the winner of the recommendations made by our followers is World Tree. Also, a huge thank you to everyone who left comments on the last video. A special shout out to Cedric Shepherd 4459, who posted the first comment, our quickest follower. I truly appreciate it. Now, without further ado, let's jump into this exciting summary. At that moment, returning to Choi, the young man knew that Yuming's comments had a peculiar, almost mischievous tone, something akin to a playful confession. He couldn't help but feel that she looked incredibly cute, which left him momentarily flustered. Just then, Yuming offered to guide the mass, and though Choi blushed, he accepted. As she prepared, he realized that even she hadn't noticed the sound of the door closing. During the prayer, Yuming suddenly kissed Choi. Though they quickly pulled apart without saying a word, Choi thought that she seemed to enjoy these small, spontaneous ceremonies in the open air. However, he personally preferred that the next one take place in a house or somewhere more private. A bit tired, Yuming teasingly suggested that Choi should lead the mass this time, joking that he seemed to have lost energy. She reminded him that she only prayed with him for fun, since she had no one else to do it with. Before continuing, Choi showed her a picture of a puppy, lightening the atmosphere. As they reached the final part of the ceremony, Choi went to fetch holy water. Yuming, with a smirk, asked him to purify her soul completely. Without hesitation, Choi took the task seriously, using plenty of holy water in the process. After a while, he felt that everything had been a bit reckless, but he was relieved that it had gone well. Just then, a notification startled him, causing his phone to fall to the floor. Yuming picked it up, and before handing it back, she saw the messages, one from Seola asking what he was doing, and another from Kim with the same question. This irritated Yuming slightly. When Choi asked what she was doing and if she could return his phone, she, visibly annoyed, asked why he hadn't been as devoted during the mass. Choi didn't understand what she meant. He had simply asked for his phone and suggested she get ready to leave. Finally, Yuming urged him to hurry, saying she still didn't feel her soul was fully purified. Her words resonated with Choi, reminding him of a past moment with Seola, making him wonder if he truly wasn't as good at leading prayers. Meanwhile, Yuming, though frustrated, admitted to herself that she might have overreacted and let her jealousy get out of control. Wanting to make amends, she started to apologize, explaining that she hadn't meant to say that, but Choi interrupted her. He didn't want things to end that way. He was determined to ensure her soul was truly purified, so he removed his coat, leaving Yuming wondering what he was thinking. Choi, after considering his options, suddenly suggested they take a walk around the school. This left Yuming blushing as she asked if he seriously wanted her to go outside wearing her cosplay. Outside the restroom, Choi looked around carefully to ensure no one was nearby. Clearly, he was planning everything meticulously. Meanwhile, Yuming, though a little nervous, also felt a rush of excitement. Then, Choi handed Yuming her phone, signaling that their little game was about to begin. The first task, she had to walk alone to a nearby lamppost while he watched from behind. In her mind, Yuming realized she had never done something like this without her coat. Normally, she only took it off in safe spaces. Even so, she didn't hesitate and stepped out of the restroom. As she walked under the faint sunlight, she thought about how it was her first time strolling around in just her cosplay. From a distance, Choi watched intently, and when Yuming caught his gaze, her heart pounded so hard she thought it might explode. Feeling proud of her accomplishment, she turned to see what Choi thought, but to her shock, he was no longer in his spot. Panic struck her and she called out, asking where he had gone. Just then, her phone rang, startling her. When she checked the screen, she saw a message from Choi. It read, "Had enough yet? Meet me behind the science building. I'll be waiting." Yuming was both confused and irritated. What kind of game was he playing? That afternoon, she heard rustling in the bushes and wondered if it was just the wind, but she was more preoccupied with Choi's bizarre challenge. The situation felt a bit cruel, yet oddly thrilling, so much so that she started humming softly. However, she stopped when she suddenly felt her soul becoming a little tainted again. Scolding herself for ending up in this situation, she thought she must be crazy. She worried that someone might find her like this. At that moment, two students saw her in cosplay and assumed she was someone seeking divine guidance, offering to lead her on the righteous path. Of course, this was all in Yuming's imagination. She feared something like that could actually happen. Suddenly, a noise behind her made her bolt. As she hid, she wondered if someone had spotted her. Fearing she might be discovered, she decided to cut through the forest to reach her destination. When she finally arrived, a hand suddenly grabbed her shoulder, making her jump in fright. A familiar voice called her name. It was Choi. He had been looking for her. Choi explained that he had been secretly following her to make sure everything was safe, but he was surprised when she suddenly ran into the forest. Relieved that he was there, Yuming hugged him. That's when Choi noticed a small scratch on her face. Yuming guessed it was from a branch. Choi apologized and pulled out some wipes to clean the wound. As he leaned in to help, he noticed Yuming was unusually quiet. He assumed the experience had been too intense for her. However, Yuming suddenly threw the wipe at him, catching him off guard. After everything she had been through, she teased him, asking if he wasn't going to help calm her desire to find the word of God. This flustered Choi, but he decided to help. He pulled out his Bible, only to realize Yuming was drenched in sweat. Jokingly, Choi told her she looked like a river of sweat after running so much in her cosplay. Choi then asked if her soul wasn't purified already, warning her that this time he wouldn't let her go. Yuming shook her head, assuring him that her soul had been cleansed long before. They continued with a brief prayer session. Choi was intrigued by how Yuming managed to handle difficult situations, which she found amusing since she knew he was just as flustered as she was. This annoyed Choi, so to keep her from teasing him further, he started reading the Bible at a faster pace. Yuming noticed how childish he was acting, but at the same time she realized how close they were to the school and that there was nothing shielding them. Someone could easily pass by and see them, causing her mind to go blank. She called herself crazy once again. At that moment, when Choi went to get the holy water, he used more than usual to purify Yuming's soul and keep her from saying anything. Feeling relieved, she just wanted to rest after everything that had happened that night. However, Choi kept teasing her about how sweaty she was, almost as if she had run a marathon. Later, they went to buy some snacks, but Choi asked if she was sure that would be enough, or if she preferred him to buy her a bit more food. With a smile, Yuming assured him it was fine, knowing that as students, they didn't have much money. Besides, she could only stay for a quick snack since she had to return to work. Choi jokingly commented that she looked like an overworked graduate student. However, what he truly cared about was whether Yuming was feeling better. Embarrassed, she admitted that everything they had experienced that night was so surreal that she almost forgot they were in the middle of a prayer session. Though she had to leave before parting, Yuming wanted to ask Choi something. She wanted to know if he was involved with Seola. Choi, a bit nervous, assured her it wasn't what she thought, that he had simply made a mistake after drinking some juice, and that he'd rather pretend nothing had happened. Yuming smiled, telling him it didn't matter if they continued later, but Choi didn't understand what she meant until he heard her say that everything that had happened had made her heart race that day. Finally, she said goodbye, telling him she was looking forward to their next game and calling him Master once again. Choi was left speechless, blushing and confused. As he walked alone, he began to wonder if Yuming only sought him out to keep her company during their prayer sessions, or if she actually wanted to fulfill her need to believe in something. He thought maybe he had just been caught up in the moment, but he also realized that continuing this kind of game could be risky. Suddenly, he heard someone being harassed. Paying closer attention, he saw two men bothering a girl who was trying to go home. To his surprise, the girl was the same one he had bumped into earlier that day. As everyone stared at him, Choi muttered his thoughts out loud, not realizing it until it was too late. Seola instantly recognized him as the guy from the cafe. Without hesitation, she hugged him and thanked him for the delicious coffee, confirming to Choi that she was indeed from his department. One of the men asked why Choi was getting involved in their business, but Choi couldn't stop focusing on the guy's awful smell, probably from the juice he had been drinking, which irritated him even more. He responded that he was the girl's sunbae and wanted to know who they were. One of them claimed to be her boyfriend and that they were just having a drink, but since she was already feeling dizzy, he was going to take her home. Choi, suspicious of their words, glanced at Seo to confirm, but she was dozing off, making it impossible to tell if they were telling the truth. Still, he decided to investigate further before drawing any conclusions and asked which school Seo attended, knowing there was a university nearby, but that it wasn't the one she went to. One of the men lost patience at his questioning and attempted to punch Choi to drive him away. Choi analyzed the situation in an instant, hesitating about how to react. Ultimately, he returned the blow swiftly, leaving both Seo and the man's friend stunned as the attacker collapsed to the ground, writhing in pain. Shocked by his own reflexes, Choi realized he had acted instinctively. Seo, who had just woken up, was utterly confused by what had happened but found Choi surprisingly entertaining. Just as the other man tried to attack Choi from behind, he was suddenly electrocuted. Choi, bewildered, noticed Seo holding a taser in her hand, though she didn't seem eager to use it. Despite thinking she was a bit unhinged, he grabbed her hand, telling her they had to run before they got caught. Seo, laughing, ran alongside him, finding the whole situation amusing. Once they had gotten far enough away, she commented that it had been a long time since she had run like that. Still somewhat unsettled, Choi asked his junior what she had drunk to end up in such a mess. Seo laughed, saying it was funny that he called her junior. Choi then asked for her name so he wouldn't have to keep calling her that. Amused, Seo asked if he really thought she looked that young. She then explained that she had been on a date, but the guy she went out with kept insisting that she was wasting her time focusing solely on her career. It had irritated her because he earned less than she did, yet had the audacity to lecture her about her age and professional life. Seo also mentioned that during the same date, the guy told her she was getting too old, which infuriated her, leading her to down an entire bottle by herself. Choi, still confused, couldn't figure out whether Seo was in her 3rd or 4th year of university. However, she thanked him for always making her feel better whenever they ran into each other. At that moment, Seo suddenly shouted that she was still alive, while also hurling insults at people, convincing Choi that she was completely crazy. That's why he decided to carry her, apologizing for the trouble she had caused while taking her to find a taxi to get home safely. Worried about her, he made sure she got into the cab. Before leaving, Seo thanked him for helping her and asked for his name. When he told her, she stepped closer and gave him a kiss on the cheek before introducing herself as Seo John. Then the taxi drove off, leaving Choi completely flustered. The next day, in her apartment building, Seo was mortified as she recalled the embarrassing situation she had gotten into with a student because of the alcohol. She had no idea what to do if they ran into each other again, and her embarrassment was so overwhelming that she couldn't bring herself to go to class. Meanwhile, at the university, Choi asked Yuming if she knew anyone named Seo John among their juniors. Yuming paused, trying to remember someone by that name, but quickly changed the subject, complaining that she was tired of eating at the school cafeteria and asking if Choi wanted to eat out. He asked if she was free, but before she could answer, they overheard a group of girls criticizing another student for not being with Kim, saying she deserved it. This confused Choi, who tried to figure out who they were talking about. When he turned around, he saw Seola sitting alone, staring at a message from Kim, who was busy with festival preparations. Seola understood the situation and had planned to eat alone, something she was already used to. In her mind, she thought it was actually the others who felt uncomfortable whenever they crossed paths, so she decided that next time she would go to a restaurant instead. Suddenly, Seola was at a loss for words when both Choi and Yuming sat across from her. Choi casually remarked that he only did it because the seat was empty. Meanwhile, Yuming found it arrogant that Seola, a first-year student, was occupying an entire table by herself. Seola jokingly said it was a special seat reserved for Yuming, who sarcastically thanked her. While Yuin and Choi were chatting, something on Yuin's student card caught Seola's attention, especially how cute it looked. She asked how she had gotten one with a different design. Yumin explained that she would receive it once she entered graduate school, which made Seola drop her own card. Teasing her, Yumin pinched her cheeks and asked why she had let it fall as if it were an insect. Seola simply replied that she had been surprised. The scene made some of the engineering students hesitate about whether they should join them for lunch, as it looked like they were arguing. Meanwhile, the girls who had been criticizing Seola were left speechless and left the cafeteria. As Yumin walked out, she received a message from Professor Seo, who told her she couldn't come to the cafeteria due to certain circumstances and asked if Yumin could bring her lunch. Yumin found the request odd, feeling like it was just a cheap excuse. Meanwhile, Seola was more interested in whether Choi had any plans. When he said he was free, Yumin excused herself to go to work, wishing them luck. However, Seola, knowing Choi had no friends to hang out with until his next class, asked if he wanted to accompany her somewhere for a bit. The two of them left together, and from a distance, Yumin found the situation disgusting, thinking Seola was up to something since she was getting too close to Choi. At that moment, the girls who had been speaking ill of Seola approached Yumin, telling her that they hadn't meant to eavesdrop. It had just been a coincidence, but they all agreed that Seola was a bit strange. This piqued Yumin's curiosity, especially since they seemed to know something about Seola's intentions. Sensing where the conversation was going, Yumin asked what they meant. Encouraged, the girls went on, claiming that Seola acted like a queen, making the boys in her class do her assignments. They also said she was rude to older women and treated Kim like her personal servant. Yumin cut them off, unable to process everything they were saying at once. Even so, the girls wanted to know if she agreed that Seola was like that. The blonde hesitated for a moment, unsure how to handle what she had just heard. One of the girls tried to defend her point, saying that when she saw them eating with Seola, the latter didn't seem to have a good attitude. She was concerned that Seola might be harmful, given her position as a teaching assistant. The others agreed that Seola was quite irritating. However, Yumin disliked talking behind people's backs, especially when they followed someone just to gossip. She told them to grow up since they were in university. The girls were stunned by her words and decided to go shopping instead, supposedly out of fear of being alone. Once again, Yuman couldn't understand how things like this could happen in university. It felt more like a gang dispute. She knew the girls were jealous, but she also recalled how Seola had gotten too close to Choi earlier. Though she didn't want to admit it, that had made her feel slightly uncomfortable. Still, she was certain she didn't like Choi and wasn't jealous. Suddenly, she realized she had forgotten Professor Seo's lunch. That same afternoon, in the city suburbs, Choi felt extremely uncomfortable being in a women's department store, something Seola noticed. Jokingly, she told him he looked like a puppy that needed to go to the bathroom. Choi nervously denied it, but admitted he didn't feel comfortable being there. Seola had brought him along to help her pick out clothes. When she showed him her first outfit, Choi simply thought it looked good on her. By the second one, he hesitated a little, which annoyed Seola. But when she showed him the third outfit, Choi was genuinely impressed and told her she looked great. However, Seola wasn't entirely convinced, as he always seemed to say the same thing. This time, Choi really meant it, but Seola wanted to know if he had any other impressions. A bit embarrassed, she suggested he could say something like pretty, but he didn't hear her well. Feeling awkward, Seola told him to forget it. At that moment, Choi recognized some girls heading in their direction. Quickly grabbing Seola's hand, he pulled her into a fitting room to hide. Seola, confused, didn't understand what was going on until Choi whispered that they were girls from their faculty. He believed that if they saw him with her, they would start gossiping behind their backs again, and he didn't want to cause her more trouble. These words made Seola blush. She mentioned that he had also helped her before. Back in the cafeteria, he had worried about her. Choi tried to brush it off, saying he had only taken the seat because it was available, but Seola knew that thanks to him, Kim had dared to approach her. Still, Choi insisted that Kim was kinder than she thought, but Seola didn't believe him. Grabbing his backpack, she pulled him closer and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Choi was left speechless, while Seola waited for some kind of reaction. Even so, he didn't know what to say, and feeling embarrassed, Seola muttered that it would have been even more awkward if she had kissed him directly. Choi realized how flustered she was, but Seola quickly assured him that she wouldn't let him tease her anymore. Surprised, Choi asked if she was crazy, but Seola knew she wasn't as good at doing nice things as Kim. That's why she told him she would make it up to him with a little mischief. She pulled out a chalice she had with her, noticing how much it gleamed, and jokingly asked Choi if he wanted to stop before starting a mass. In his mind, Choi couldn't believe how she could be embarrassed by a simple kiss, yet say things like that so casually. Despite his nerves, Choi agreed and asked her to help him clean the chalice, making sure to remove every bit of grime. As they worked, Seola suddenly started coughing hard, and Choi signaled for her to keep quiet. Once she felt better, she refocused on cleaning the chalice with determination. Seeing her expression, Choi knew she wouldn't leave a single stain. He liked that focused look of hers. Seola then commented that she needed to drink some holy water to avoid staining her new clothes. Choi handed her the water, which she sipped carefully. Outside the fitting room, the university girls were still trying on clothes when Seola accidentally choked a little on the holy water. At that moment, both of them realized that her clothes had gotten slightly stained. When they exclaimed in surprise, a store employee overheard them and approached to ask if everything was okay. Still flustered, Seola quickly responded that it was nothing. In the end, she ended up buying the dress since it had gotten dirty. Choi thought things could have gone much worse, but noticed that Seola still seemed a bit anxious. In her mind, Seola felt an urge to find inner peace. Her body demanded it, but her thoughts were interrupted when Choi jokingly complimented her on how thoroughly she had cleaned the chalice, even if she had gone a bit overboard. Seola nudged him with her elbow, reminding him that she was always careful when cleaning things. Not understanding why she had hit him, Choi was caught off guard when she asked for his opinion on her cleaning technique, saying she genuinely wanted his thoughts. Acting a bit smug, Choi replied that she was good. After all, she had even managed to extract holy water from the chalice. Seola teased him, saying that was way too simple of an answer, which annoyed Choi, as he realized she was referring to the accident earlier. Seola found it amusing, though Choi still didn't entirely grasp what she meant, considering her a bit strange. However, Seola was confident that if she wanted, she could get even more holy water. Choi didn't think it was a big deal, but Seola, brimming with confidence, assured him that she would. They decided to drop the conversation since people were starting to look at them strangely as they walked. Choi asked Seola to be quieter since they were in public and had just barely gotten out of a tricky situation. If they ran into someone who recognized Seola, it could cause her problems. Hearing this made Seola's heart race, and she suddenly asked Choi if he wanted to prove he wasn't a loser. Annoyed, Choi didn't understand what she meant, but when he looked at her, he saw that she was pointing toward a nearby magical town. His eyes widened. Seola was convinced that he wanted to keep praying since she had just admitted that she needed to cleanse her sins. Her words lingered in Choi's mind, and in the end, he accepted that his classes could wait.